Whenever I tell people that I think Tesla shares are going to be worth $10,000 within the next 10 years, I often get kind of crazy looks. And I don't blame you. I mean, come on, it seems nuts. And to be honest, if you aren't really following the company that closely, I think that's probably a reasonable perspective to have. As long as you're not shorting the stock, that's super dangerous. For those who actually want to know why crazy people like me think that the stock is going to go to $10,000 or more, it's actually not that crazy. Currently, Tesla has capacity for almost 1 million vehicles if they're running their factories 24/7, which they can't do. But they are currently building out capacity for about 5 million vehicles between their factories in Berlin and Austin, the two new ones, and their existing factories in Fremont, California, and Shanghai. These factories are coming together really quickly. You don't need to trust me for that. You can go and watch all the drone footage that other YouTubers are putting up online. Progress is insane. In 2020, they delivered about 500,000 vehicles, which means, based on Tesla's projections, in 2021, they'll do about 750,000. And if you can ramp that up, that brings them up to about 20 million deliveries in 2030. 20 million vehicles a year is a lot. And there is no car company on planet Earth that is currently selling that many cars. So two of the questions are, can they produce that many in 2030? And if they're making 20 million cars a year, how much is this company going to be worth? Well, the truth is, the value of Tesla is not the same as other car companies. Now, there's some pretty basic reasons why. For example, they don't have to sell through dealerships, so they have higher profit margins. Electric vehicle production is also enjoying a steady decline in cost. This is because it's newer technology, and as they develop new technologies, they find ways of cutting the cost. Internal combustion engines, that's a much older technology. They don't get to enjoy those same cost declines. Currently, Tesla's on a trajectory for their production cost of vehicles to be lower than internal combustion engines. Their new proposed $25,000 car would easily fit that bill. So you might be saying, oh, I get it. They're selling 20 million cars a year. They're have a lower cost than internal combustion engine cars, and their cars are cooler and better. And yeah, that's true. But that's not where the real money is going to be made. To understand where Tesla is going to make the real money, you have to look at their autonomous ride-hailing business. Picture a regular Uber. It costs about $2 a mile. And now I'm in Canada here, so we're talking about $2 for every 1.6 kilometers or so. Let's run the math for a second. Let's imagine that instead of charging $2 a mile, Tesla, without a driver, can charge $1 a mile. Back when Elon did their Autonomy Day presentation in 2019, they said their cost per mile was about 18 cents. Okay, let's assume that that stays the same and doesn't decline, as we know that it is declining. These vehicles don't have drivers, so their main cost is that 18 cents. Now, maybe there's some additional cost for cleaning. And then, of course, Tesla has its own operating costs, their management, all that stuff. Let's say that costs them 32 cents a mile, which is significantly more than the actual drive. Right there, you are looking at 50 cents per mile of profit. Without a driver, these cars could be operational a lot of the time, and especially if you're in an urban center, there's demand for driving most hours of the day. But let's cut that in half. Let's say 12 hours a day, these autonomous vehicles are driving. Let's also imagine they're driving in urban areas primarily, so the actual distance traveled is not that far compared to rural. So let's go with a figure of 14 miles per hour driven. Times that by 12 hours a day, times that by $1 per mile. Cut that in two to factor in expenses, and all of a sudden, you're looking at $30,000 per year profit per vehicle that is on the road. Now, this assumes that Tesla owns these vehicles, which, according to its Autonomy Day, it plans on owning quite a few of their vehicles. Their users will also be able to put their vehicles onto the Tesla network, and at that point, Tesla will be receiving a lower amount of profit than that. Elon has also said that they intend to stop selling vehicles to the public at some point. Now, I'm a little skeptical of that claim. I mean, why not sell vehicles if you have enough? But that might be the question for a while. If you could get in a really awesome Tesla with all these entertaining features and no driver to have to smell or sit with, paying $1 a mile, half an Uber cost, I mean, there's a lot of people that are gonna wanna do that. In fact, I've heard a lot of people say that when you get that cost below 60 cents a mile, that's cheaper than owning a car. You don't have to deal with parking or any repairs or insurance or any of the hassle with owning a vehicle. Plus, you get to ride in a Tesla, which It's pretty sweet. Now here's where you get to the crazy part. If Tesla adds 1 million of its own vehicles to the Tesla network, based on the numbers I said earlier, that adds $1 trillion to the company's valuation. $30,000 a vehicle times 1 million vehicles, and then give that a 35 PE, which I can explain again later if you'd like. That adds $1 trillion to the company's value. Just for fun, let's imagine that in 2030, Tesla adds the full 20 million vehicles to its Tesla network. That could potentially mean that Tesla would add $20 trillion to its valuation in 2030. Now you're thinking, whoa. Okay, we got a nut on our hands here. This is just crazy. And I kind of agree. I feel like there'll be new competition in the autonomous driving space. Somehow their margins will compress and they'll be able to make a lot less than that full amount of profit. Why do I say that? Well, for one, it just seems crazy. If they can add 10 or 20 trillion dollars to the valuation annually, I mean, at what point does the world just run out of money to give to Tesla? Intuitively, it doesn't really make sense. And you know what? There's got to be some holes in that plan. Anytime you have a perfect scenario where everything works right, you know it's probably not going to go all the way there. In order to unpack where the problems in this plan could come from, it's probably going to come from one of two areas. One is vehicle production, and the other is autonomous driving. Now, as I said earlier, Tesla is currently building out factories to bring their production capacity up to about 5 million vehicles. In 2020, they produced 500,000 vehicles, so that's a 10x in production capacity. Now, let's assume that Tesla finishes building out these factories in 2025, which is actually, that seems to me like pretty conservative. Now, that would be a production capacity of 5 million vehicles in 2025, not even factoring out new factories that they'll probably start building out over the next few years. Now it starts to get a little crazy because you realize, wait a second, they said 50% compound annual growth of deliveries. That 50% growth number, that only brings you to about 3.8 million vehicles in 2025. So if they manage to build out to a capacity of 5 million by 2025, we would be way ahead of schedule in getting to that 20 million vehicles. My guess is this 50% compound annually is not going to happen in a linear and smooth direction. My guess it's going to be above 50% compounded annually for the first several years, and then later on in that, they probably plan on decelerating that growth rate, but increasing the growth in terms of absolute numbers. They'll be able to take everything they learn from building these current set of factories and build new and even better factories in the next 5 years. 5-year time horizon, it looks to me like Tesla is going to be way far ahead on that 50% compound annual delivery number. Now, personally, I don't take these claims on face value. Every day I'll be looking up, okay, are we making progress here? Is Tesla doing what they say they're going to do? Based on what I've been seeing, they seem to be actually ahead on their factory build-out timeline. This personally gives me a lot of confidence that that 20 million a year number in 2030, that might be fairly safe. Let's move over to the autonomous driving, and this is where people tend to get a little bit squirrely. There seems to be a lack of belief that Tesla will be able to deliver on their full self-driving promises. They've been behind on these timelines for the last couple of years. When you look at what they have delivered, it's pretty impressive. But once you get into city streets and stop signs and all the little details of that is currently not offered to all their customers. However, for a small coveted group of FSD beta testers, they have been granted access to full self-driving that will do city streets. Now, it's still a little bit clunky. It needs interventions. The driver has to be paying attention. But it's amazing to see these cars stop at stop signs, take roundabouts, take left turns. There's very few scenarios I've seen these vehicles not able to handle, at least to some degree. I've seen videos of these cars driving on snowy roads or on roads with no lane markings. As these vehicles approach pedestrians or cyclists, the car will move out and go around. As it approaches a stop sign, it'll creep out a little bit just to get a better look before proceeding. With each update that goes out, there seems to be fewer problems. It gets closer and closer to that elusive driverless situation. Currently, Elon is promising with the version 9 of the FSD beta, they'll be able to do a wider rollout because he expects a, quote, step change in improvement. Tesla's next step in rolling out this program is with their subscription service. So you'll be able to buy a Tesla and then subscribe to their full self-driving. That'll mean that at first you'll still have to monitor the car, but it'll do most of the driving for you. As this rolls out wider and wider, they'll be able to feed all this data into their neural net. Tesla has the best engineers in the world, and that's part of why they're able to be so far ahead on these sorts of developments. So after the subscription service rolls out, these full self-driving improvements should accelerate and improve more quickly. At which point, it may soon be a shocker that these cars will be able to fully drive themselves. For me personally, I'm thinking we might start to see a fully autonomous ride-hailing network from Tesla next year in 2022. Now, at first, this will probably roll out in specific geographic locations, areas where the legislation on self-driving vehicles is already established, and higher population density areas where Uber and Lyft thrive. What excites me is this opens the pathway that conceivably in 2022, Tesla could be producing more than 1 million vehicles and have their fully autonomous ride-hailing network. This means that elusive target of being able to make $30,000 per vehicle and produce 1 million vehicles within 1 year could be at hand. This means that Tesla's market cap could conceivably be going up by more than $1 trillion per year starting next year. Will this happen next year? I think there'll be delays. You gotta think that there's gonna be some kind of slow rollout on this thing as they prove its safety, as regulators follow it to make sure that this is an okay thing to bring into their area. You could have complaints from municipalities who want to ban them for protection of taxi networks or that kind of thing. But the demand for these vehicles will be so great that I think they'll be able to find enough friendly cities to be able to deploy these widely pretty quickly. I mean, consider this. If Tesla adds 1 million ride-hailing vehicles to its network in a year, that first 1 million vehicles is hardly going to make a dent compared to the amount of vehicles that are driven currently by human drivers. So to say Tesla has room to grow into that would be an understatement. Now, let's assume that this ride-hailing network is up and running in 2022, 2023. Do you think it'll be up and running in 2030? As if it is, and they're making 20 million cars, this could be the biggest company the world has ever seen by an order of magnitude. Thanks for watching Buying Yourself. If you like this video, please subscribe and like the channel. This is my first video, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I want to hear what you have to say about the autonomous ride-hailing network. Will Tesla pull it off? If so, what do you think Tesla will be worth in 2030? Have a great day. Talk to you soon.